Alright, I will say good morning. Let's begin. Today's daf is Peches 88. We are picking up on the bottom of Pei Zayin Amud Beis. So remember again, in the Mishnah we had the machlokes between Rabbi Meir. We shouldn't start with machlokes. Let's start with that everybody agrees with. So in the Mishnah we spoke about the case of where a man said, a woman made a neder, and let's say a husband heard the neder, and he said, I know that my wife is making a neder, but I did not know that the nedarim that she is making can be annulled by me. So in that case, again, where a husband did not know of his rights, so the Maisa, again, everyone agrees that when he does find out about that, he does have the right to annul the neder. In other words, saying that the Yom Sham'o, the day of hearing, so to speak, ultimately begins when the husband becomes aware of his rights. The machlokes case in the Mishnah was where a husband says, I know I have the right to go ahead and annul a neder, but I did not know that this was the type of neder that I can annul. So in that case, Rabbi Meir says, sorry, once the day's gone by, you're done. Whereas the Chachamim say, no, you have the ability to annul the neder. And I will say, I want to just go back for just a moment and just spend a few moments on a Ran that I read too quickly yesterday, that we just needed for today. So look at the Ran. Backwards is Rabbi Meir Omer Lo Yafer. So Rabbi Meir says again in this case where he knows about his ability to go ahead and annul the neder, but he did not know that this is the type of neder that he has the ability to annul. So says the Ran, Rabbi Meir Omer Lo Yafer. So Rabbi Meir says once the day elapses, he no longer has the ability to annul the neder. Writes the Ran, Ika man do Amar de Lo Yafer klal kamar lo hayom velo acher shehodiu shu yachal lahafer hayom. Rabbi Meir's shita is that, that the husband cannot annul the neder both on the day that it was made, as well as on a subsequent day when he discovers the fact that this is a neder that can be annulled by him. Delo mikri yom sham'o shiyehi mefer ela kishiyodea shu yachal lahafer ula akar shodiu shu yachal lahafer nami lo yafer mishum diyadia kamaisa legabe shelo yuchal lahafer acher mikan yom sham'o mikri kvar avar. So both say Rabbi Meir holds like this. In order to be able to go ahead and annul the neder, you have to be able to have full knowledge. You have to have full knowledge. Therefore, again, on the day that you heard the neder, because you didn't have full knowledge, you can't annul it. But yeah, Rabbi Meir, there's a little bit of a catch-22 here. Rabbi Meir says, on the other hand, having knowledge that you can annul nedarim, but just not realizing that this neder was one that could be annulled, is too much knowledge to be considered partial knowledge. So as I see here, this, right? So on one hand, it's not enough knowledge to actually be able to annul the neder, but it's enough knowledge, I think Ben so mentioned this yesterday, to be able to know, ask the questions that need to be asked. You know you have this right, so do your homework and figure out what your rights are. So that's the sheet of Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir's whole chap is, I can't annul it because I don't have full knowledge. On the other hand, it's enough full knowledge on the Yom Sham, on the actual day of hearing it, to prevent me from having the opportunity to annul it sometime later on. Look at the next one. The Chacham Yafer, the Chacham say that you can annul it. So it says Duran Biyom Zeh. When the Chachamim say that in this case where a husband knows about his rights, but doesn't realize that this is an annullable neder, so the Chachamim say that the husband has the ability to annul it, but Rabosai says the Chachamim on that day, on the day that she actually makes the neder, or the day that he hears the neder. Biyom Zeh, the Sviralei, the miktsas yediyah kechol yediyah. Because Rabbosai, see, remember in Rabbi Meir's shita, let me show you the test case. Let's say Rabbosai, a man says like this: woman makes a neder, and husband says, I know I have the right to annul nedarim, but I'm not sure that this neder is annullable. But you know what? I have a great idea. I'm going to cover my bases. Right? I hereby annul your neder. So Rabbi Meir says that doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Because annulment of nedarim requires full knowledge. You have to understand your rights, and you have to understand explicitly that this is an annullable neder. To annul things out of safek, just to cover your bases, doesn't work. The Chachamim say, not true. The Chachamim say if you annul things just with partial knowledge, that annulment works. That's the fundamental machlokes over here. You'll see why this is important. So now start the Gemara. So the fundamental machlokes is Does partial knowledge work for annulment? Rabbi Meir says no, and therefore Rabbi Meir says this is kind of like a catch-22. Therefore, you can't annul it on the day that you heard the neder, but you also can't annul it 2 days later when you figure out that this isn't an annullable neder because you had too much information on the day she made the neder. Chachamim say partial knowledge is good enough for annulment. Therefore, if he just says, I'm going to annul the neder, even though I'm not 100% sure that this is an annullable neder, that annulment works. Says the Gemara or Minhu, we ask the Kasha, below Ra'os, so this is actually very interesting. So below Ra'os, again, the Torah says, if someone, this is talking about the murder b'shogeg, somebody kills someone else accidentally. So the Torah is talking about over here, that one individual kills another below Ra'os, without seeing. So the Gemara says, prat l'suma. This comes to, so the halacha, of course, is actually this week's parasha as well. If you kill someone accidentally, then what is the halacha? You have to go to the Ir Miklat. So the Torah says, however, if somebody kills, so that's below Ra'os. Somebody kills accidentally, go to Ir Miklat. So it says, below Ra'os, prat l'suma de Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Huda says, below Ra'os comes to exclude a blind person. A blind person. Take a look at the Ran for just a moment. Or minu below Ra'os, prat l'suma, misha harag es hanefesh, b'shogeg, eino gola, d'midichsiv below Ra'os, mashma dekanhu below Ra'os, aval b'makom achar yachal liros. So this is very interesting. Huda Torah says, below Ra'os comes to exclude a blind person. Why does it exclude a blind person? Because below Ra'os makes it sound like here, when you killed someone b'shogeg, you weren't looking. But the inference is that what? Is that in other life circumstances, you are looking, you have sight. Therefore, someone who is below Ra'os at all times is excluded from this parsha altogether, and therefore, if a blind person kills someone b'shogeg, they don't have to go to the Ir Miklat. Rabbi Meir Omer l'rabos es asuma. So this is very interesting. Rabbi Meir holds that halacha l'maisa below Ra'os comes to include the suma, comes to include the blind person. Look at the Ran. Rabbi Meir Omer l'rabos es asuma. Because since even a blind person has partial understanding or partial knowledge, meaning he's able to sense when someone else is there, even though the blind person doesn't know exactly where the other individual is, because he doesn't see him, nevertheless, even a blind person has a basic awareness. Also, we know this, that a person who's blind develops other senses very, very keenly and is able to sense the presence of others. Therefore, the Maisa, again, that partial knowledge is enough to make him responsible for his accidental murder, accidental act of killing. I will say, see here the Kasha. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir said that partial knowledge does not work. That's why if the husband just knows that he has the ability to annul, but doesn't know that this neder is annullable, and he decides to just annul it to cover his bases, that doesn't work, because partial knowledge is not enough. Yet, here, when it comes to killing b'shogeg, partial knowledge is enough to make you chayiv galus. Partial knowledge is enough to make you responsible that you should have to go to the Ir Miklat, because even according to Meir, the blind person is going to be liable for killing someone b'shogeg, and is going to have to go to the Ir Miklat. Top of Peches. Amar Rava says it's not a kasha. Hacha me'inyan dikra. So we'll say this answer, literally, this pasuk is independent, this pasuk is independent, which will say is another way of saying it's apples and oranges, right? They're two dramatically different cases. And meaning, although you want to infuse a common denominator line of reasoning, that in fact is not the case here. What does it mean? Rabbi Huda Savar, so we're going to explain the case of killing b'shogeg. So the Rabbi Huda Savar, Gabi Rotzeach Ksiv, Vasha Yavo Esrei Ehu Bayar. So listen to this. The pasuk says by the person who killed b'shogeg. This is actually this week's parsha, right? So Vashar Yavo Esrei Ehu Bayar. So a person will come into the forest with his friend. So Rabbi Yehuda paskins Kol Debar Meyalayar. Any person who is capable of coming into the forest is what? Is subject to the laws of Ir Miklat. Is subject to the laws of one who kills b'shogeg. Okay, because once remember what Rabbi Yehuda is pointing out is the way the Torah frames the discussion is Asher Yavo Esre'ehu Bayar. So Rabbi Yehuda sees that not just as a circumstantial description, but almost as like a profile. Who is the type of person that is subject to the laws of Ir Miklat? The type of person who could come into the Yar. Who does that come to include? The Suma Nami Bar Me'olayaru. a blind person is also capable of coming into the forest, and therefore he should be subject to the laws of Ir Miklat. Now, 1 second. V'i amrit below ra'os l'rabos asasuma shavosai. So on one hand, we have the phrase, the profile, asher yavos re'eu bayar. But we also have another profile, which is what? Below ra'os. That how do we describe the person who kills b'shogeg? He kills without seeing. Without seeing. So if you want to say that without seeing comes to include the summa, I don't need that. Why don't I need below ra'os to include the summa? Why not? Because I already got the summa. Miyar nafkale. I've already included the summa in the blind person in the parasha of Ir Miklat from Asher Yavos Re'eu Bayar. Therefore, what does below ra'os come to do? Ella shma mina below ra'os prat l'summa. Therefore, I will say must be if Asher Yavos Re'eu Bayar gives me the general profile of any person who could walk into the forest is subject to the laws of Ir Miklat, and below ra'os is coming to exclude someone. So who is it coming to exclude, says Rabbi Huda? It's coming to exclude the blind person. Because you can remember, Asher Yavos Re'eu Bayar would include the blind person. Therefore, below ra'os must be coming to exclude the blind person from the laws of Ir Miklat. That's Rabbi Huda Shita. On the other hand, Rabbi Meir Savar, Ksiv Bivli Das, the pasuk says that the case of Ir Miklat, the case of killing someone b'shogeg, is Bivli Das. So Bivli Das also means what? Without premeditation. Without premeditation. I did not intend to kill this person. So Kol Debar Meda, which tells you about say what? That the only people who are subject to the laws of Ir Miklat are people who have das. Meaning, when it says that I committed this act, bivli das means, here I didn't have das, but what? In other circumstances, I have das. So, v'suma lav barmedu. Now, we assume that a suma doesn't have das. What does that mean? When I killed someone below bivli das, it means I didn't see the person there. I didn't see the person. That's the whole chap. I came into the forest to go ahead and chop wood, and I didn't see the person there. So the inference is that the person we're talking about is capable of seeing others in other circumstances. The summa, however, lav barmeidahu, the summa is not able to see others in other circumstances as well. Therefore, again, it must be that bivli das comes to exclude the summa. V'i amrit below ra'os prat l'suma. So we'll say, so now again, remember, so Rameir says, my profile praises bivli das. So a person doesn't have awareness over here, which indicates that a person does have awareness in other areas of life or other circumstances. A suma doesn't have other awareness in other areas either, should be excluded from the laws of Ir Miklat. Fine. So bivli das teaches me that suma is excluded. But I still have another phrase of what? Below ra'os. So what does below ra'os teach me? Sevi'i amrit below ra'os prat l'suma. If you want to tell me that below ra'os comes to exclude a blind person from the laws of Ir Miklat, then I don't need that. Why? Mibli das nafkale. I already learned that from Mibli das. Elashmamina below ra'os l'rabos esasuma. Therefore says, who is this? Rabbi Meir. Thank you. Therefore, says Rabbi Meir that below ra'os actually comes to include the summa. So I'll say the point that the Gemara is making over here is what? So first of all, fascinating machlokus between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Huda as to whether or not the blind person is subject to the laws of Ir Miklat. Just so you should know, we paskin like Rabbi Huda, and a summa is not subject to the laws of Ir Miklat. So if a blind person accidentally kills another, he does not have to go into galus. And of course, again, the Goal Adam, the redeemer of blood, the relative of the deceased of the person killed, does not have any rights to go ahead and kill that individual. So what the Gemara is suggesting is the following. Remember, we thought that the machlokis of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Huda here was like the same type of machlokis in the Mishnah. That just like in the Mishnah, Rabbi Meir says that partial knowledge is not enough to affect change. I would have thought over here also, partial knowledge is not enough to make you liable to the Ir Miklat, to go to the Ir Miklat. But yet Rabbi Meir holds that partial knowledge is what we call the blind person possessing partial knowledge, because he doesn't have full awareness. Yet Rabbi Meir says that he does go to Ir Miklat. So the Gemara positioned this as a kasha on the Mishnah, to which the Gemara says, not a kasha. two dramatically different things. Yes, the Mishnah is talking about how effective partial knowledge is. And Rabbi Meir says it's not effective enough to allow the husband to annul the neder. But this discussion by the Summa has nothing to do with partial knowledge. Now, what does it have to do? It's fully rooted in interpretation of biblical verses. Machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is how you dash in the psukim, and ultimately, again, which phrase you use to create the profile, whichever phrase you use to create the profile, ultimately then you'll use below ra'os to create an exemption. So depending on how you create the profile will ultimately determine how you understand the exemption. That's the fundamental machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Says the Mishnah, Hamadir hana'a mechasno. Mechasano, I should say. This is actually very interesting. So let's say I make a neder that I don't want my son-in-law to get any benefit from me. Never happened, right? I don't want my son to get any benefits from me. So what happens? V'hu rotza laseis lebito mos. But what? I want to give my daughter money. So remember, I don't want my son-in-law. I made a neder that my son-in-law shouldn't get any benefit from me. So I can't give him anything, but I want to give my daughter something. So how do I do this? Omer la hari hamaos ha'ilu nisunin lach b'matana. So first of all, he says to her, this money is given to you as a matana. This money is given to you as a gift. Ubilvad shelo yehela ba'alech reshus bahen. On the condition that your husband has absolutely no rights over this money. Elama sha'at no seis v'nosenes beficha. The way we're going to interpret this phrase is, and you should use this money ultimately again for your food, and the money should only really become, and the object should only become yours once you actually put it in your mouth. Because once you put it in your mouth, then what? Then the mice, again, the husband has no rights over it. So we'll define a little bit more what that means in the Gemara. But so let me draw your attention to the Ran for just a moment. So if you look up in the Ran, it's a 5 lines up from the end of the Ran on the page. And it's 6 words in. Actually, 7 words in. Ki amar la nami elama sha'at nosenes lafich. Amai mehani. So the fundamental issue that we're going to deal with in the Gemara is, how is it that a father is able to make this gift if at the end of the day whatever a woman acquires goes to who? Goes to her husband. So obviously, again, he's giving this gift al Tanai, and the Tanai is actually, we're going to see it's a double Tanai. Part number 1 is, this money is given to you on the condition that your husband has absolutely no rights in it, and somehow he's saying ultimately that it should be used to go ahead and feed you. You should go ahead and acquire it when it comes into your mouth. So writes the Ran, Ki amar lanami elamash sha'at nosenes leficha. Amai mahani. Why does this work when he says elamash sha'at nosenes leficha? What does that mean? So the Gemara says, Hainu taima mishum techayvan she'in isha zocha benechasim klal ad shetitin osa l'soch pia hari ba'osa sha'a ein habal yochel lezakos bahem. So also, here's what's interesting: that at the moment that a woman puts something into her mouth, literally she's about to eat it, because the husband has no rights over that. Ulafizeh dafka ki amar la masha'at nosenes leficha. Aval im amar la ela masha'at miskaseh ukiyotze bo lo mahani. So we'll say what the Ran is pointing out is that the Mishnah is choosing its words very specifically, in that the only way for the father to give over something to his daughter without the husband having rights in it is if she uses this for her own food, because that food is going to be something the husband does not have any rights over. But if, let's say, he just says, go ahead and buy yourself some clothing or something, husband would have rights over that clothing. The kaniyas on bao, the ikaman the amar duhadin b'shiyachtan la iza davar shi. Okay, fine. So we'll say same thing. Take a look at the rush for just a moment. So the rush is in the right hand margin. So in the second wide line of the rush, lo shanu ella. Actually, I'm sorry, we didn't get to this yet. I'm sorry. Now let's look at the Gemara. So we'll say, so this is the fundament. So this is the issue in the Mishnah over here. So remember, in this case, I have the neder. I'm neither prohibiting my son-in-law from getting any benefit from me, but I want to be able to give my daughter something. The Mishnah is telling me how to structure that gift to my daughter. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav, so we'll say fundamental machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Amar Rav, lo shanu ela da Amar la, masha'at no seis binosenes beficha befich. So remember, Rav says that this ability for the father to give his daughter a gift only works when the father explicitly says, I'm giving you this gift, and ultimately, again, you will acquire it when you use it for food and you put it in your mouth. Aval Amar Mashetirtzi Asi Kana Yason Bal. But if the father just says, look, go ahead, here's the money, use it for whatever you want, what happens? Husband acquires it. So according to Rav, the only way for the father to convey this gift is literally if he specifies that it's to be used for food, and he understands that she'll only acquire it the moment Mamish she's putting it in her mouth. Shmuel says no. Shmuel says, Shmuel Amar Afilu Amar Masha Tirtzi Asi Lo Kani Yason Bao. Shmuel says, no, not true. Even if the father says, here's the money, do whatever you want with it, the husband still does not acquire it, it's for the girl. So take a look at the Rush for just a moment. Says the Rush, Lo Shano Ella Da Amar La. It's the third to last line in the Rush, fourth to last line. Lo Shano Ella Da Amar La Mashat No Says Veno Senes Lefich. Hare Perish Masha Amar Bitchila Hamaos Halalu Nesun Lecham Matana to Havi Matana Lechol Davar Ela Masha Piri Shilchach Ahani Nami Mashar Amanas. So we'll say in Rav's model, it's not just enough for the father to give the gift with a Tanai. And the Tanai says what? That this is the gift on the condition that your husband does not have any rights. And that's not enough by itself. That Tanai must be accompanied by a statement that you can only use this for food and you acquire it when you put it in your mouth. Shmuel, on the other hand, holds that no. As long as he says this is your gift on the condition that your husband has no rights in it, she could use it for whatever she wants. Take a look at the Rush again. Aval Amar Lamashatir Tziasi, Kevan Dahavi Matana Lechal Davar, Kani Asom Bal, Besulo Ahani, Mashar Manas Shein Lebal Shusa. So it's the sheet of Rav. So according to Rav, if he just gives it to her generally, then Lamais, again, husband will acquire it. According to Shmuel, on the other hand, if he gives it to her generally, as long as it was an explicit Tanai, that the husband has no rights in it, husband will not acquire rights in the gift. Fundamental machlokas. So turn the page. We'll say Amud Beis. So Keman Azla Hashmaisa. The Rav. So we'll say, who does Rav hold like? Could Rabbi Meir. Rav holds like Rabbi Meir. The Amar Yad Isha Ki Yad Baila. So we'll say, so Rav seems to go with the sheet of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds that the hand of a woman is like the hand of her husband. In other words, whatever a woman acquires, the husband automatically acquires as well. Therefore, according to Rav, the only way to get around this is to give not just to give a gift with the tonight the husband has no rights in it. That by itself won't work. It's got to be accompanied by a specified usage of the item that the husband, that the father ultimately is giving to the daughter. But I'll say again, take a look at the Rush for just one more moment. So the Rush writes over here. Where is it for you guys? Left-hand margin? Good. Left-hand margin. Kiman Azla Shmaisu de Rav Krabi Meir. De'eslei parakaman de Kiddushin. De'ein kinyan la'evid below Rabo. V'sava Rav de V'isha nami kam Rabbi Meir. De'ein kinyan la'isha below Baila. So both sides. So Rav clearly holds like Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir holds that a husband acquires whatever his wife acquires, and therefore Lamaisa again, in order to prevent the husband from acquiring the money that the father is giving to his daughter, there A must be an explicit t'nai. This is your gift on the condition that your husband has no rights in it, and B, there must be a specified usage. It's for food in your mouth, and you only acquire it once it comes into your mouth. So the Gemara says, or minhu, but we're going to raise a kasha. Does Rav really hold like Rabbi Meir? Ketzad mishtatfin b'mavoy. So I'll say this takes us back to our Eruvin days a little bit. So how do you make a shituf muvaos? So again, look at the Rush for just a moment for a quick review as to what shituf muvaos is. Ketzad mishtatfin b'mavoy. Chatzeros hapsuchos l'mavoy. Remember again, in Talmudic times, they had the following setup. You had a number of homes that opened up into a joint courtyard called the chatzer, and a number of chatzeros that opened up into a shared alleyway called a mavoi. That mavoi would then lead out to the Rosh Hashanah. So technically speaking, you could carry from a chatzer to a mavoi. Technically you can. But because the mavoi resembles Rosh Hashanah, so Chazal, the rabbis wanted you to do something, some type of eruv for that mavoi. Remember what an eruv does is an eruv, like a shmokin, who it combines everything. It draws everybody together. So so they don't call it an eruv muvos, rather they call it shituf muvos. So how do you make the shituf? So chaseres hapsuchos lemavoy. I'm reading the Rush os ros zoal zo. Letaltal mitochal lemavoy mishum de chaseres miyuchados lebalin va'mavoy l'rabim. So again, without a shituf, you can't carry from the chaser to the mavoy. The gazra chachamim dilma asilaf lokim rosh hasayach rosh hasarabim. Ad sheishtatfu yachad. So we'll say the Chazal were concerned that if we allow you to carry from your chatzar to the mavoi, you may come to what? Now remember, chatzar to a mavoi looks like a Rosh Sayachet to Rosh Sarabim. You may come to do that from a little Rosh Sayachet to a little Rosh Sarabim. Therefore, again, the rabbi said you have to do a shituf. V'nira ki'ilu darin kulam yachad v'makom shemunach shitufan. So we'll say, so what happens? When everybody contributes to the shituf muvos, it looks like everybody lives together in one particular area. So how do you go ahead and do the shituf muvos? Go back to the Gemara. Maniach hasachabis. You take a barrel of wine. Now again, it doesn't have to be wine. The Rash points out it could be wine, it could be plastics, it could be whatever you want. But you take a barrel of wine, va'omer harei zalachol b'nei mavui, and you make a statement, and you say that what? This barrel belongs to all of the members of the mavui. So now let's say I am the one, I am donating, the Silber family is donating the barrel of wine for the shituf muvos. Now remember, the shituf only works if what? If everyone has an ownership interest in it. So fine, it says, very nice that I say, this belongs to everyone. Of course, we know in halacha, saying that this belongs to everyone doesn't mean anything. Somebody has to actively, I am the owner of it, I want to convey it to everyone. Someone must acquire it on behalf of all of the residents of the mavui. Now, also you could do that, remember, again, because of Zakum Adam Shlo B'fanav. So I can acquire something on your behalf, even without your knowledge, if it's objectively beneficial to you. So this is objectively beneficial to be able to walk into the mavui. So I say I'm donating the barrel. Now I need someone to acquire it on behalf of all of the residents. So who could do that? So also I could ask my Jewish servant or maidservant to acquire it on behalf of the residents of the mavui, or or through my adult children. I'm also now the chap of my adult children is what? They're independent of me, hopefully. Right? They're independent of me. So because they're independent of me, therefore the mice, again, they could acquire it on behalf of others. Ishto. Oh, and who else could acquire it on behalf of all the residents of the mavui? Who else will say? My wife. Which indicates what? That my wife is a separate, independent entity from me. Because remember, again, I want to point out that halacha lemaisa, if remember, in order for me, see, I as the owner of the wine cannot be the one that conveys ownership to everyone else. Just the din in Kinyan. The owner can't be the acquirer. So I want to give everybody the wine, but lemaisa, again what? But lemaisa, I need someone else to be able to acquire it on their behalf. What's the job description for the person who's going to acquire it on behalf of the residents of the mavoi? What's the job description? Not me, right? It's a very simple job description. The person just can't be me, or can't be an extension of me. That's why, again, I can't use my minor children. I'll tell you where this comes up. The truth is, this happens in my house all the time, not with the mavui. But when we make an Erev Tavshilin, so we do the Erev Tavshilin on behalf of the entire shul. So it's very nice. If I own that egg and that matzah, or whatever we use for Erev Tavshilin, so I can't make the Erev Tavshilin for my family and also go ahead and convey ownership of that to the entire kila. That requires the presence of a third party. So the Gemara is now saying over here that a wife could serve as that third party to acquire on behalf of the people of the mavli. V'i amrit kana yashon baila eriv lo nofik mirushu seidavas. I don't understand. You just got finished saying, meaning Rav was one who just got finished saying what? Yad isha kiyad baila. I should say Rabbi Meir is the one who says that Yad isha kiyad baila, that the hand of a woman is like the hand of her husband. Therefore, again, whatever she acquires, he acquires. Well, if that's the case, then why should she be able to acquire the shituf on behalf of the other residents of the mavoi? That would be essentially, it would be the equivalent to the husband taking it from one hand and placing it in the other, which of course does not work. To which the Gemara says, listen to this. Amar Rava responds, Afal Gab Dab Rabbi Meir Yad Isha Kiyad Baila. You're right. Even though under normal circumstances, Rabbi Meir says that the hand of a woman is like the hand of her husband. Modeh Rabbi Meir le'inyan shituf. Rabbi Meir agrees that there's an exception to this rule, which is in this particular case of shituf muvos. He agrees that although normally, again, a husband has the wife's, whatever wife requires comes to the husband, her hand is like his hand. This is the exception. The chevan de lazakos la'acherimhu miyad baila zachya. Listen, this is very interesting, because since ultimately, again, he wants her to acquire ultimately on behalf of others, therefore she is able to acquire from him. Now what does that mean? So take a look at the Ran for just a moment. The Ran says, Mod Rabbi Meir le'inyan shitov techevan delezakos la'achirim hu chevan denafik bayla zachya. Denehidam Rabbi Meir de'in kana le'ish de'in kinyan le'isha v'lo bayla. Even Rabbi Meir said that normally a woman can't acquire separate from her husband. Hani mili hechidi yoivla acher matana. So also listen to this. When do we say that whatever a woman acquires, her husband acquires? That's when she's receiving something from a third party. See, he has control over her yad. He has the acquisition power over her yad. So if she receives something from a third party, he has the ability to acquire that. Avamodehu debal shenosan matana leishto kansa ve'in aval ochel peiros. Both listen to this. Rabbi Meir agrees that what? Rabbi Meir agrees that lamaisa, if the husband gives something to his wife, then I will say, what does that automatically assume? What does it automatically assume? That he wants her to acquire it, which means that what he's saying is like this: if I'm giving you something, it means I want you to have it. If I want you to have it, then for that act, what I am doing is I am removing my ownership over your hand so as to allow you to acquire the item. Because otherwise, what's the point of him giving her something if ultimately it just becomes his anyway? So I'll say this is actually quite amazing. And in fact, if you look at the Rush, just for 1 second, the Rush says, "Kevan de lezakos la'achirim hu miyad by lezachya, the kevan de bal gufei mezakya lahem, or mestalik mimasha zocha." Since in this case, what's happening over Rabbi Osai? Remember, the husband is giving over the barrel, he's going to ownership over the wine to the woman. Now, Rabbi Osai, the only way this works is if she's able to acquire it. So if he's just giving it to her, but he still retains acquisition interest over her hand. I should say, does it make sense? Acquisitory power? Is that such a word? No? It sounds so good though.
This morning.
Right? I'm sorry?
This morning it'll work.
This morning, if he maintains the power of acquisition, her power of acquisition, then lemaisa, again, the whole thing doesn't work. So obviously, if he's giving it to her, the unspoken statement that he is making is, for this moment, I am removing my rights over your yad. Because I'm removing my rights over yad, therefore you have the ability to acquire it on behalf of the other residents of the alleyway. So he goes on, look at the Rush. He says, so again, remember, this is not unique over here. Essentially, what the Gemara is suggesting is like this, that even Rabbi Meir holds Masha Kana Isha Kana Baila, nevertheless will agree that concept really is stated in reference to things that she receives from a third party. Whatever she gets from the outside, he has the right to take that item. But if he himself is giving her something, and it's clear from the circumstances that he wants her to own that item that he is giving her, then clearly what he is doing is, he's removing his own ownership interest from it so as to allow her to acquire. So in this case over here, the sheet of Mavos, he wants to give over the barrel to the residents of the Mavui. He can't do it himself. He needs an independent third party. When he gives it to his wife, what he's essentially saying is, here, acquire this on behalf of the residents of the Mavui, which by definition requires me to remove my acquisition rights over your hands, and that's in fact what he's doing. I'm back to the Gemara, I'm sorry. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Meir normally holds that the hand of a wife is like the hand of her husband. In other words, that the husband has the ability to acquire from her hand. Rabbi Meir agrees in this case of Shituf Muvos, that since the whole point is that the husband wants her to acquire it on behalf of other people, she's able to acquire it from her husband, which means that he is able for that moment to remove his rights over her hands. So both I say again, remember, where the Gemara is holding right now is that it's not a stira. So even Rabbi Meir, who holds Masha Kana Isha Kana Baila, only really makes that statement with things that she receives from a third party. But things that she receives from her husband, which the husband clearly wants her to acquire, he removes his rights so as to allow her to acquire. Ravina Ravashi, but Ravina raised the kasha to Ravashi. Elu shezachin lahen. We'll say again, still in Shituf Muvos. Here is a list of the people whom the man could give over, let's say, the barrel of wine to be able to acquire the barrel on behalf of the residents of the Mavui. Who are they? Bino ubito agidolim, my adult children. Avdo ushvach v'shivchasa ivrim, my Jewish servant and maid, because well, as much as they're my servants, they are still separate, autonomous beings. Ve'elu she'in zachin al yadai, and these are the people that cannot acquire on behalf of the people of Mavoi. Who are they? Beno Bitu Aktanim, my minor children, because you're going to both say they're an extension of me, therefore they can't acquire on behalf of the people of the Mavoi. Va'avdo v'shivchas Aknanim, my non-Jewish servant or maidservant, because they are considered to be property, and therefore they are also an extension of me. V'ishto, and my wife. So now we have a blatant contradiction, because over here, what does the Brisa say? Over here the Brisa clearly says that Lamaisa again, a wife cannot acquire on behalf of the residents of the Mavoi, which again, now on one hand, this is a problem. On the other hand, it actually works okay. On one hand, it's a problem because it contradicts what we just said before. On the other hand, it just affirms Rabbi Meir's shita of Yad Isha Ki Yad Bailam. So how do we reconcile all of this? To which the Amar Ravashi, rather Ravashi says, Masnisin b'shiyesh lachatzer ba'osa Mavoi askinan. Oh, so Ravashi says something very interesting. That what's the case when the Mishnah said before that Lamaisa, a husband could convey ownership to the residents of the Mavoi by giving over the barrel to his wife? That's a case of where she herself owns a chatzar in the Mavoi. Look at the Ran for just a moment. Ela Amar Ravashi, Ki katani hamizaki la'idei ishto dafka b'shiyesh la'chatzar ba'osa Mavoi. What's the case of where ultimately again she could acquire it on behalf of the residents of the Mavoi? That's when she herself also has a chatzar in that same Mavoi. Kigon shenafla la b'yerusha ba'odarusa. We'll say again. So the Ran is, it doesn't, for our purposes right now, it doesn't matter how she owns it, but the point is she owns it and her husband has no rights in it. Therefore what? Therefore, the migo de zachia l'nafshei, I'm reading the Gemara, since she's able to acquire for herself, zachia l'achrini. So we'll say, so since by definition she has to acquire part of that barrel, because again, she has an ownership interest in the chatzar. She has a chatzar, therefore she has an ownership interest in the mavoi. So because she is one of the mavoi participants, and therefore since she has to acquire on behalf of herself, therefore what? Since she could acquire on behalf of herself, she could acquire also what? On behalf of others as well. Take a look at the Ran for just a moment. The migo the zachil afsha lahatir chatzira. Since she has to acquire for herself because she has a chatzar, therefore she has to acquire her own portion of the shituf. Therefore, what? Zachya namilachrini. She has the ability to go ahead and acquire for everyone else as well. So Moshe says, therefore, again, two different reconciliations of this particular brayso. And I will say now it's interesting to note that Lamaisa, so let's say for again, this comes up, it could come up Shitu Avos, but let's say it comes up also, technically speaking, through, let's say the Erev Chatzeros, the Erev Tavshilin case. So how do we pass with the Erev Tavshilin case? So we'll say it's interesting. So the halacha is l'chatchila, it's preferable not to use one's wife as the party to acquire on behalf of the community. Because if you see over here, remember, this seems to end up a little bit of a machlokes as how exactly this works. So better not to. But lemaisa, again, if there's no one else around who could serve as that person to acquire on behalf of the community, then lemaisa, again, the wife could serve as that conduit to acquire on behalf of the entire community. And the logic being that even though we say yat isha kiyad baila, yet husband has the right to remove those rights from her hand. In a situation where he dafka wants her to acquire something, he has the ability to say, and it doesn't even have to be spoken, it's understood circumstantially, that Lamaisa, even though I normally acquire everything that comes into your hand, I am hereby removing that right so as to allow you to acquire either on behalf of yourself or on behalf of others. Alright, so we'll stop over here. We'll pick up with the Mishnah tomorrow. Let me just actually read you one last piece of halach. I'm sorry. So just remember, we actually totally got into a tangent over here. The way this sugya got started was, remember again, the husband, our father wants to give his daughter a gift. The problem is what? He went ahead and he made a neder that his son-in-law can't get any benefit from him. So remember we had a machlokes between Rav and Shmuel as to how he has to structure the gift. According to Rav, the only way to give the gift is how? This is the gift on the condition that your husband has no rights in it, and you can only use it for food. You only acquire it once it comes into your mouth. Shmuel says no, you could give the gift and you can say, as long as you say this is your gift on the condition your husband has no rights in it, that's absolutely fine and she can use it for whatever she wants. How do we paskin? So the Shulchan Aruch in Yeridea, Reish Chaf Beis Sif Aleph writes the following: Hamudar mechasno. A man makes a neder that his son-in-law can't get any benefit from him. V'hu wrote said lo seis lebito maos kadei sheteinan isbahem umotzi osa mechavatzel hariz no sin lava omrla hari maos ha'elu mesum lecham matana obilvat shlo yehela ba'alech reshus bahen eliyu lemasha at nosenes lebich o lemasha tilbishik yotzi bazeh. Also, the Shulchan Aruch passes halacha l'maisa like Shmuel, and in fact, as long as there's an explicit Tanai that says this gift is for you, and your husband has no rights in it, l'maisa what? She could use it for whatever she wants. That's how the halacha is. Shulchan Aruch halacha l'maisa. Alright, so we'll stop over here. Now we'll really stop. We'll pick up with the Mishnah Mir Hashem tomorrow.
It's a Musaf word, right? It's like a Kadosh Baruch Hu. He owns everything except he removes his ownership to allow us to possess things, but that's basically his